Right now, as you are watching this, the Japan Meteorological Agency has issued a Nankai Trough Earthquake Extra Information Bulletin, the formal government notification that a significant earthquake has occurred along one of the world's most dangerous fault systems, and that scientists are evaluating whether it represents a foreshock to something far larger. The earthquake that triggered that bulletin struck at 9:17 JST on July 29, 2026, magnitude 6.8. The epicenter was located approximately 40 kilometers off the coast of Kochi Prefecture on Shikoku Island. At a depth of 18 kilometers, strong shaking was felt across Kochi, Ehime, and Tokushima prefectures. Buildings swayed in Osaka. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued a tsunami advisory for the Pacific coastline of Shikoku and the Kii Peninsula within 3 minutes of the event. Emergency alerts reached tens of millions of mobile phones across central and western Japan within seconds of detection. 15 minutes after the earthquake, the extra information bulletin was issued. This is only the second time in the bulletin's history that it has been triggered. The reason a magnitude 6.8 activated a national-level formal evaluation process rather than a routine agency notification is the specific fault this earthquake struck. The Nankai Trough is a 900-kilometer subduction zone running along Japan's Pacific coast where the Philippine Sea Plate dives beneath the Eurasian Plate at 4 to 7 centimeters per year. It is the fault line to Japan's government has formally designated as the country's highest priority seismic risk. It is the most densely instrumented subduction zone fault on Earth, and 4 months before today's earthquake, its ocean floor monitoring network detected an anomalous slow slip event in the exact segment where the magnitude 6.8 struck. Today, we are going to break down exactly what the data shows, why this specific earthquake in this specific location generated a bulletin used only once before, and what Japan's own government projects a full Nankai Trough rupture would do to the country and the world. No guessing, no dramatizing, just the facts, the science, and the real stakes. Drop a comment right now. If you are in Japan, in Osaka, Kochi, Nagoya, Kyoto, or anywhere across central and western Japan, tell me your city, what intensity you felt, and whether the earthquake early warning reached your phone before the shaking arrived. And if you are outside Japan, tell me whether you knew the Nankai Trough existed before today, and what you think about the country of 125 million people living above a fault this size. Subscribe right now if you want every JMA bulletin and significant seismic advisory from Japan covered the moment it drops. Completely free. A thumbs up helps this reach the people across Western Japan who need accurate information right now. Let us go for 5,000 likes, and now let us get into what DONET detected and what it means. At 247 positions on the ocean floor, directly above the Nankai Trough, an array of sensors operated by JAMSTEC, Japan's Marine Science Agency, transmits real-time data about seafloor pressure changes, seismic detection, and ground deformation to shore via fiber optic cable. This network, called DONET, is the most directly positioned subduction zone monitoring system ever built. Rather than detecting seismic waves that have already traveled through kilometers of rock to reach land-based stations, DONET measures what is happening at the fault interface itself, in real time, continuously, 24 hours a day. What DONET detected between March and April 2026 was a slow slip event in the segment that just produced the July 29th earthquake. Slow slip events are quiet. Aseismic releases of elastic strain along the fault interface, the plates sliding a few centimeters without producing the violent rupture that generates damaging earthquakes. They are normal. They happen repeatedly along the Nankai Trough. What made the March-April event scientifically notable was its location in a segment with historically lower slow slip activity, and the fact that it was accompanied by a seismic swarm at depth detected simultaneously by DONET sensors. JAMSTEC published a technical bulletin in May 2026, noting that this combination was consistent with patterns observed before significant earthquakes at other subduction zones globally. It explicitly stated that no prediction was possible, but it flagged the segment for elevated attention. On July 29th, a magnitude 6.8 struck that same segment. Its location and depth were consistent with the Nankai Trough's shallow locked interface, the zone where the two plates are pressed together and storing elastic strain. The Extra Information Evaluation Committee convened within the hour. Dr. Naoshi Hirata, emeritus professor at the University of Tokyo's Earthquake Research Institute, stated in the press briefing, "The July 29th earthquake occurred in a location and at a depth consistent with the Nankai Trough's locked plate interface. Combined with the slow slip anomaly documented in this segment earlier this year, this event warrants careful monitoring over the coming days and weeks. We cannot exclude the possibility that this earthquake is a foreshock to a larger event. Now let us understand what Japan knew about the Nankai Trough in 1944 versus what it knows today, because the contrast defines everything about why this morning's response happened the way it did. On December 7, 1944, the eastern section of the Nankai Trough ruptured in a magnitude 7.9 earthquake, the Nankai earthquake. It occurred during the Second World War. The Japanese government suppressed public reporting of the earthquake's damage under wartime censorship to avoid providing intelligence to Allied forces. The populations of coastal communities received no scientific communication about the event's geological significance. There was no ocean floor monitoring network, no GPS geodetic array, no automated alert system, no probabilistic rupture forecast. The earthquake arrived, and the damage was absorbed under a wartime information blackout. 2 years later, on December 21, 1946, the western section of the Nankai Trough ruptured in a magnitude 8.1 earthquake, another tsunami, another suppressed aftermath, combined death toll from both events. Approximately 2,585 people in a country with a much smaller population and far less coastal urbanization than today. Today, 82 years later, a magnitude 6.8 on the same fault triggered a mobile phone alert to tens of millions of people within seconds, a formal government evaluation committee convening within 15 minutes, transparent press communication within 90 minutes, and a DONET dataset giving scientists direct ocean floor observations of the fault's behavior before, during, and after the event. That transformation is not accidental. It is the product of 80 consecutive years of investment in understanding the specific fault investment driven by the 1944 and 1946 events, the 1960 Chilean tsunami that devastated Japan's Pacific coast despite originating thousands of kilometers away, the 1995 Kobe earthquake that exposed inland fault vulnerabilities, and the 2011 Tohoku disaster that forced a complete rewrite of the maximum credible earthquake scenarios for every subduction zone in the country. Now let us talk about what the science says a full Nankai Trough rupture would look like. Because the gap between a magnitude 6.8 extra information event and the scenario Japan has been formally modeling for is enormous and deserves honest description. Japan's Cabinet Office Central Disaster Management Council has published a worst-case analysis for a simultaneous full-zone rupture, a magnitude 9.0 to 9.1 event that ruptures the entire 900-kilometer locked interface at once. The scenario's findings are among the most sobering in any country's formal governmental risk literature. Ground shaking at intensity 7, the highest Japanese scale category, sufficient for widespread structural failure even in modern construction, is projected across portions of Kochi, Tokushima, Mie, and Shizuoka prefectures. Osaka and Nagoya face intensity 6, upper shaking, strong enough to make standing impossible and cause significant damage across standard construction. The tsunami is the central catastrophic element. The Nankai Trough rupture displaces the overriding plate upward, generating a wave series across the entire Pacific coast of central and western Japan. Projected wave heights on the Kochi coastline reach 34 meters. The Kii Peninsula faces 28 to 30 meters. The Tokai coast faces 20 to 25 meters. And the first wave at the most exposed Kochi communities arrives between 5 and 10 minutes after rupture, while people are still on the ground from the shaking, while roads are blocked by debris, while families are trying to locate each other. The Cabinet Office central estimate for casualties, 323,000 deaths, approximately 230,000 of those deaths from tsunami inundation rather than building collapse. The economic damage estimate, 220 trillion minus roughly 1.5 trillion US dollars. The largest single natural disaster economic loss ever formally modeled by any national government. Osaka's specific vulnerability within this scenario deserves attention. Japan's second largest city, with a metropolitan population of approximately 19 million, sits at the head of Osaka Bay, a partially enclosed water body. Open to the south, where Nankai Trough tsunami energy would concentrate, the bay's funnel geometry amplifies surge as waves propagate toward the low-lying bay shore, where port infrastructure, industrial zones, and dense residential reclaimed land sit between 0 and 3 meters above sea level. Tsunami arrival at Osaka's bay shore, in the worst-case scenario, approximately 90 minutes after rupture. Over 1.2 million people in Osaka Prefecture's highest tsunami risk zones need to be at safe elevation within that window. When you lay all of this out, the July 29th, magnitude 6.8 in the Nankai Trough's locked zone, the slow slip anomaly in the same segment 4 months earlier, the extra information bulletin, and the Cabinet Office projecting 323,000 deaths from a full zone rupture. The natural question is whether today's earthquake changed the probability calculation meaningfully. The honest scientific answer is careful. Today's earthquake does not predict a megaquake. The extra information evaluation process assesses whether it has elevated the short-term probability above the background level, which itself is not low. The headquarters for earthquake research promotion estimates a 70 to 80% probability of a Nankai Trough magnitude 8 to 9 earthquake within the next 30 years. That background probability exists every day with or without today's 6.8. The scientific question is whether today's event has materially raised it in the short term. The 1944 historical precedent, eastern segment rupture, followed by western segment rupture 2 years later, is the strongest argument for continued elevated attention. But 1944 happened without monitoring. Determining whether a similar sequence is building today requires the real-time DONET data and geodetic observations that the evaluation committee is processing right now. Let us be direct about the practical message, because information without action is just anxiety. For people living in the Nankai Trough hazard zone, Kochi, Wakayama, Mie, Shizuoka, and the greater Osaka-Kobe-Kyoto region, the most important preparation reality is the 5 to 10 minute window between shaking and first wave arrival at the most exposed coastal communities. At those locations, the strong shaking itself is the tsunami warning. Do not wait for a formal broadcast confirmation before beginning vertical wise. Evacuation, move to high ground while the shaking is still subsiding. Know your vertical evacuation point. Every coastal municipality in the Nankai Trough hazard zone has designated tsunami refuge structures, elevated buildings, hillside shelters, constructed vertical platforms. Know where yours is and how long it takes on foot, not by car. Roads will be impassable. Keep a waterproof emergency kit at home and at work. Water, food, medications, identification documents, battery radio, infrastructure disruption across the affected region may last weeks. For viewers outside Japan, a full Nankai Trough rupture generates a Pacific-wide tsunami. Hawaii faces projected wave heights of 1 to 3 meters. The U.S. West Coast faces 0.5 to 1.5 meters, sufficient to require evacuation of low-lying coastal areas across the Pacific Rim. NOAA's Pacific Tsunami Warning Center would issue advisories within minutes. Final thought. The Nankai Trough has ruptured in major earthquakes at least 8 times in the past 1,400 years of Japanese historical records. The average interval between rupture sequences is 100 to 150 years. The most recent major sequence ended in December 1946, but 79 years ago. Japan knows what is coming, not when, but what, and approximately within what scale. That knowledge is the product of 80 years of systematic investment in understanding this fault, the DONET sensors, the GPS arrays, the seismic networks, the scientific institutions that have been building toward this moment of readiness since before some of the scientists working on this problem today were born. Today's extra information bulletin is evidence that the system is working. The monitoring is sensitive enough to detect the slow slip anomaly 4 months in advance. The alert architecture is fast enough to reach 50 million phones before the S-waves arrive. The evaluation committee is transparent enough to communicate uncertainty honestly to the public within 90 minutes. That is not everything. The 5 to 10 minute window on the Kochi coast will remain a brutal physical constraint, regardless of how sophisticated the monitoring becomes. But between 1944 and 2026, Japan has transformed its relationship with this fault, from ignorance under wartime censorship to the most comprehensive subduction zone monitoring program in the history of earthquake science. We will track every DONET bulletin and every JMA advisory as this situation develops. Subscribe so you do not miss a single update, and leave that comment below. Did you feel today's earthquake? Tell me your location, because what happens when the world's most monitored fault wakes up is one of the most important stories in geoscience, and the people living above it deserve every piece of accurate information science can give them. 5,000 likes on this one. Let us go.